Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 26. Got an exciting episode today. It's all about serving the hospitality industry. So my guest is Krunal Patel. He'll be up here in a little bit after we go through some best of Reddit and some other housekeeping, but great interview. Really excited about this one. So again, mspvoice.com is your source for all things MSP Voice. Be sure to check out the site, subscribe to get new episodes. We also have our Facebook group, and we even have Twitter now as well. So a lot of ways to connect with us. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, feel free to let me know at BMDoug on most of the socials and on Reddit is the best way to reach me. So with that, let's get started with the best of Reddit. So I saw this one today and I'm like, wow, this fits in perfectly for who my guest is today. So anyone support a hotel? So this poster is, he has a boutique hotel that one of his doctors owns. So he has a customer who's a doctor who owns this hotel. He wants me to take over the IT for it. They are all you can eat MSP, so he's not even sure how to price it. It includes a restaurant, bar, salon. He's aware of some of the complexities, but how do you price something like this? So he's really asking about pricing. But what most people say is, are you supporting the hotel or the guests as well? And it kind of goes into this whole discussion, and a lot of people saying, don't support the guests, meaning, the guest Wi-Fi, all those types of things. That it sometimes can be a little bit tricky if you are providing support for the guest Wi-Fi and those types of things. So something you definitely want to take a look into. Now, there are other posters who have, there's one poster here who says that they've done a lot of assisted living facilities, which is kind of somewhat similar to a hotel, except it's long term. A couple other posters have talked about, how they do support hotels and they have it. But a couple of caveats, price is how you price your all-you-can-eat contracts, but be sure to factor in the increased number of after-hours calls, because hotels typically operate, there's somebody at the desk 24/7, and they may have an issue at 2 o'clock in the morning. So you need to make sure that your pricing kind of factors that in, as well as any kind of overtime. And then it kind of goes back into the guest Wi-Fi, and a lot of people saying, hey, contract out the guest Wi-Fi to someone else. There are companies that handle, hospitality Wi-Fi systems, and to check those out. But it's definitely one of those kind of tricky things. And it was interesting to me when I interviewed my guest, which you'll hear later, about how some of the different things that you have in the hospitality industry that you need to be aware of. So a lot of things, you got point of sale, you got PCI, you've got all these types of things, plus the Wi-Fi and the guests and all this type of stuff. So interesting work if you can get it, but definitely some things to consider, and check out the post if you're looking at supporting a hotel. Next up is kind of an interesting one. It's the person is asking, hey, we have a PSA, so they have ConnectWise, but he's wondering if he could just use the apps that come with Office 365 to kind of replace the PSA. And it's kind of it's more like a theoretical question as you read down through the post. He's saying, I'm not going to do it, but I'm just wondering if it's possible. And someone says, is this an April Fool's joke? So, but he's essentially saying, are there tools and things like that available within Office 365 that you would be used to replace a lot of the services, except for maybe ticketing that something like a ConnectWise or AutoTask provides. And some other posters talk about the fact that, in fact, there are some things that are built on Dynamics that will kind of do a lot of the replacement of a PSA. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. There's some good links to some different solutions, but it's kind of one of those theoretical, could I use these Office 365 apps to replace a lot of things? And one of the things they talk about is you do have that single sign-on, ease of use. They're all kind of connected. So it's an interesting discussion. Definitely check it out. You might learn something, and if you have something to contribute, definitely do that as well. Next up is advertising. AdWords. Is it worth it in a large metro area? So this MSP, they're smaller, they have less than 10 employees, and they're considering, dipping their toe into AdWords, so to speak. He says he has a buddy in a regional area, a smaller area, that swears by it. He says he bids for the top position. It claims it brings him a ton of inbound calls. But he says every market is different, wondering if it will work in my city of 4 million plus people. Thoughts? And it kind of goes back and forth. So the one that's got the most votes right now from Verisoft, they talk about their solution and how they build the funnel with AdWords and all those types of things. So that's kind of something that you might want to look at there. But then others talk about the fact that it's sometimes hard to figure out exactly what words to target. You're not going to pick MSP because most people who are looking, they don't know what an MSP is. They've never heard the term MSP, those types of things. And then still others are saying, hey, you can get very specific with your targeting, demographics and specific areas within your metro area that might help out. But still others say, in a metro area like that, it's going to be very expensive. So one person says, hey, just give yourself like a couple $300 a month and to start out, and someone else points out that hey, you could their budget now is $6,000 a month when it used to be $500 just 4 years ago. Just because of the explosion and the growth, and everyone's trying to get the same words, and they get bid up and all those types of things. So it's kind of one of those, there's no clear answer on whether or not AdWords is worth it. If you've used AdWords to good effect, especially in a large metro area, definitely go check this post out and maybe get some advice. But it's kind of one of those. It's not there's no clear cut answer on AdWords, but some have used it and some have used it extremely well. Next up is looking for any and all resources to help transition to MSP and improve current practices. So the too long didn't read is looking for any and all resources to help transition to MSP and improve current practices. So basically, this person, he works for a small 5-person IT company. They began as break fix, and they've been trying to transition to MSP. So that they have RMM software and those types of things, but it seems like the biggest issue they have is on ticketing. They're not creating tickets for everything, so time isn't necessarily being allotted in the proper way. And this poster is not the owner; he's just one of the people that works there. But he really wants it to succeed, and he wants it to be successful. But he needs some resources and things to show his boss to say, look, this is the way we need to do things. So he's essentially saying, hey, can you give me a list of resources or things that I can take to my boss to show him that yes, these are kind of the best practices for an MSP. This is what we need to do. So then there's a lot of helpful advice. Most people are say, hey, the first thing you have to do is get the owner on board. Because he's in the mindset right now of hours equals money and customer issues equal hours. So he has to swap that mindset before this company can start to transition. And I definitely do agree. If your owner is not on board with kind of making this transition to whether it's all you can eat or monthly billing, and instead of this break fix and time and materials, then it's going to be very, very difficult to make that transition. But if they're committed and they want to give it a try, there's they talk about a lot of great resources here. Obviously, ticketing is the most important thing. Ticket everything, including documentation. And the poster's like, wow, that's interesting. I wouldn't thought about tracking documentation. But again, it's to your benefit to track everything and have everything documented and make sure that everyone knows where to go, so that when an issue comes up, they can find the documentation very quickly and get moving. Especially in all-you-can-eat contracts. Efficiency is the key, and documentation is one of the biggest keys to efficiency. So anyway, there's a lot of great tips and tricks in this particular post. So definitely check it out. One person says ASCII group. I've been to several ASCII events, and they're a great group. So something he may want to check out as well as some additional books and other resources. So great resources here if you're really struggling on going into full MSP mode. And finally, we have best way to support remote users. So this person has a client who wants to have 2 users in a co-working space on the other side of the country. Oh boy. So these are going to be 2 users who are in an office that is shared by others. and they're going to need IT support for their laptops in this co-working space. And so, he's talking about asking how to do it because, if one of the laptops fails, what can he do? He can't necessarily remote in. Does he have a spare that he can overnight? Those types of things. So, again, I'm sure a lot of you have probably faced this, similar type of issue is how do you support these like remote users, even if they're in a co-working space? And a lot of people talk about too is, hey, maybe you can get, a router and set up a permanent VPN and those types of things. But it's not clear if the co-working space will allow that. It might just be, hey, everyone's on the same Wi-Fi. You can't make any changes. So, there's that. So others talk about getting a NAS to store backups and share files. But, the original poster says they're going to be using Office 365 for everything. So that not necessarily a need to share files. But we talk about backups and local backups, that might be, something that they need. Whether or not you need a NAS for that, you might be able to just get by with portable USB drives that they plug in when they get to the office and run the backups from there, as well as cloud and those types of things. So a lot of interesting things here. I think it goes a little bit too much into the whole network and NAS and those types of things. Again, most of the co-working spaces that I've been to, have just kind of a VPN for everyone or have a Wi-Fi for everyone to use, and then you could require your customers to VPN from their client into the home network if need be. So lots of interesting types of stuff that they talk about here on best way to support remote users. So with that, I'm going to take us to the interview with Krunal Patel. He is with Ignitus out of the UK. Again, he supports the hospitality industry. Really interesting, interview. Not something that a lot of the other MSPs that I talked to do in supporting hotels and retail and those types of things. So take a listen and enjoy the interview. Hello and welcome. Today I am very excited to be joined by Krunal Patel with Ignitus out of the UK. Krunal, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Thank you for having us on, Doug. Basically, my name is Krunal. I'm the director for a company called Ignitus Limited. We started out in 2009, and we are MSP for the hospitality sector and bit of a retail sector, providing IT services to them.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at your website, and you are in the UK. This is kind of where you're based, and you do a bunch of basically hotels, coffee shops, those types of things, and that's kind
Correct, yeah.
So, what was kind of the decision to go into that particular vertical?
So basically, after I finished my master's in computer networks management, I used to work for a company, and they did IT as a value-added service. Their core business was interior fit-out, and they used to get IT, as just a value-added product, that they used to sell on, and we used to then take on the maintenance. I saw the opportunity in the arena because I got frustrated myself working as an IT engineer in the sector. When there was a problem, you get people ring fencing themselves to say, oh, that's not my issue, speak to the telephone engineers. This is not my issue, speak to the key card company. So I said to myself, this is not fair on the hoteliers or the hotel owners because they are non-technical people. And I think we should have one technology shop, sort of solution. So we take that burden away from them. And of course, they're happy to pay for it. So this is how the Ignitus was born out, because we wanted to provide a one-stop shop technology solution to the hospitality sectors, because the owners are great at opening and operating the hotels, but when it comes to IT, when something doesn't work, they get fobbed off. And I think that was a frustration that they had, and I think that's where we excel.
Yeah, I know as a guest of many hotels throughout the world, I have been frustrated myself when Wi-Fi doesn't work or the TV doesn't work, and you call down to the front desk and they're like, we don't know. It's like so. I can sympathize with the fact that the hotel operators and just the people working and those types of things, they're not technology specialists. So I guess having that one vendor to go to is pretty advantageous.
Yeah.
So. What about thinking about hospitality? Obviously hotels, coffee shops, those types of things. What are some of the specific things? I know, again, I come from experience because I've stayed in a lot of hotels. it's different. Like a lot of the MSPs I talk to, they're helping small businesses where, it's just an office network or, 5 or 6 people or maybe 10 people. They might have to set up a guest network, but not very often. But like in the hospitality industry, you've got the people that work there at the hotel or the coffee shop that have to have access. And then you've got this whole guest network and all these guest systems you have to set up. So what are some of the challenges there?
Well, basically, I think planning, is the
Mm-hmm.
biggest challenge, that we have. But uh, say when you're working with the branded hotels, say like Holiday Inns or the Holiday Inn Expresses, or say Accor hotels, there is
Mm-hmm.
a brand guideline, that you have to follow.
Yeah.
And with your expertise, of course, then you have to take the guideline and take it to the next level so that it can be implemented. Um, so the challenges are the construction, the way people build the hotel is changing. People
Mm-hmm.
every day, construction cost is being reduced because you get these ready-made pods. They come from China. There's a lot of steel
Yeah.
in it. So that kind of presents a bit of an issue. But I think it comes with an experience, and working with the brands, is easier than the
Okay.
non-branded hotel, because non-branded hotel, the concept is basically just make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I think the owner's mindset is a bit different, and when you are driven by the brand, I think it's easier, to implement a good solution, that kind of last years and years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say you are working with a branded hotel. Do they have kind of their software that they want you to implement, or is it still you have to kind of bring it
So
in?
no, so I think uh, so if a customer is opening a new hotel or say the new
Hmm.
project starts, we get involved from the beginning. So
Okay.
we would know as to what the brand is, and then we kind of lay out as to what the structure cabling requirement is, as
Hmm.
to what cable they should put in for the front desk, for the rooms, throughout the hotel, and
Yeah.
then what sort of phone system they should get, because they're working with specific brand. The brand will have a choice of the PMS software, that, oh,
Okay.
you can use Amadeus, or you can use the Opera, or you can use Guestline. And then we will collect all that information,
Hmm.
from the software vendors, including the cost, and then present it to the client. And then client
Okay.
can make the informed decision as to what is what. Because sometimes what happens is the vendors, if they directly speak to the clients, some requirements, don't get interpreted. So we
Yeah.
kind of work as a project consultant and the interpreter, to go with
Mhm.
it, and we make sure everything kind of works together, and hence our tagline, making it work. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we do.
Cool. And so, because when I first, when I first went to your website, I knew that you worked in the hospitality industry, and I just kind of had this assumption that you worked for, standalone hotels, and then I went to your website and I saw all these brands, scrolling up that that you've worked with, and so, I was kind of surprised. But I guess in another way, most of these hotels are franchises. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're basically buying into this franchise, so it's still up to that owner to get everything set up. So, and I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
for MSPs in the United States, because I was thinking, well, in the United States, everything's a chain. There's chains everywhere. So I wasn't sure if this is, hey, is this a model that someone in the United States, might be able to work as well? And I'm sure there are MSPs in the States that focus on the hospitality industry.
Yeah, I think because it is a franchise model, franchisees are allowed to go with whatever solution partner they would like,
Hmm.
bar some product. For example, PMS vendor, you got a list to choose from.
Yeah.
Now they are implementing the brand standards for the case services, because everything is getting integrated with the cloud and the mobile key and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So there are some guidelines towards it,
Yeah.
but there is still a role for MSPs like us, because there is always a value that we add.
Okay. Great. And then so from a monitoring perspective, do you kind of, do you once you've got everything set up, do you then, obviously you have to kind of continually monitor things, right? I'm guessing that's part of your contract.
Yeah. So basically, so once everything is set up, the
Hmm.
things to monitor is, the status of, say, if it is a full igniter solution, then we will monitor the gateway, we'll monitor the access point, as far as the Wi-Fi goes. will be checking the CCTV to make sure the CCTV is working and recording. When it comes to say the PMS network, the IT network, we'll make sure the server patches are up to date. The server backup is happening. The server, there are some services. Just to give an example. So if you are an IHG hotel, there is a central reservations process. Holidex. That has to be running all the time, because if that is cut off, you basically are cut off from the central reservation. So we have RMM tool, that monitors those kind of processes to see if it goes offline, does it come back, and stuff like that to make sure operationally, we keep the hotel going, as much as we can.
Okay, great. So, understanding, you're obviously you're in the managed services business. You just happen to focus on hotels. For someone who might just be starting out in this managed services industry, whether they're focusing on hospitality or medical or whatever, what kind of advice do you have for someone who's just getting started?
I think having an open mind, towards technologies, because it changes quite a lot, and then deciding as to what you want to take on to manage, because sometimes you can take on a whole lot and then you're not able to effectively implement it. So specialize, basically, add on as modules as you go along. You should have a base to start with. For example, when Igniters was started out, although it was started out with the frustration that we don't want clients to be fobbed around, from services to services. We only did IT, and then everything else, we started to add as bolt-on, as we grew, kind of thing. But we were honest with our customers, So I think being honest with your customers, because your customers are your partners, your growth partners, is a key as well. So something. Everybody does a mistake. If you make a mistake or if you don't know something, be open with it, because then they can make an informed decision. So I think start with something small, that you are specialized in, and then add the other services around your industry, because that's how you can grow. Nobody likes a simple IT service contract anymore, because it's not just about IT.
Okay, and then so understanding that now, getting new business, right? I mean, have you established a name for yourself within the hospitality industry there, or do you still have to go out and advertise? How do you get new business?
So we have we have established ourselves, because like I said, we started out in 2009, but of course, it's got its the sector has some competition, so we kind of keep in touch with the bigger franchisees, when the new hotels are opening. We keep in touch with the owners. We exhibit in the trade shows, for the independent hoteliers. So it is still a challenge, that to try and get a new business. Of course, word of mouth works. And I think that is the best bit, that has allowed us to be where we are, which kind of gives me a pleasure that we might be doing something right. But to get a new account, is of course you have to go out and look for it.
Yeah. Okay. No, because that's one of the things people ask about a lot is how do I get new business? How do I advertise? How do I let people know what I do? So it's always and like you said, I'm sure there are hospitality events, like trade shows and those types of things where you can go and exhibit at and get leads. So that's
get
probably
get
definitely a good source for that. So understanding you've been doing this for a while now, what is the greatest part about being in managed services and especially in the industry you serve? What do you enjoy the most?
I think I enjoy the most when the hotel opens its door, or when we are doing sort of change of brand. When basically the new flag goes on. I think the end result is it doesn't come without a pressure. It comes with the endless hours that you have to work to. Put it all together. Sometimes, clients under pressure don't get what you're saying. Sometimes some suppliers don't get it. But I think that's the challenges, that we signed up to. We wanted to be, somebody who pulls everything together. So I think being able to do that is what, kind of excites us and, keeps us going. So, yeah, basically, sometimes you get basically a third-party service provider, who kind of has got a blinkers on the eyes and can't see beyond something, and the customer systems are down. And if you are able to use your common sense knowledge, to get them up and running, although it is not your remit, that's what kind of makes us happy.
Okay. What about what's one of the things you don't like? What's one of the worst parts?
I think the worst part is being able to share the knowledge that a person has to the team. So we have got a office in UK and we got office in India, and we run 24 hours help desk, and it's difficult to part that knowledge, because you can do the training as much as you want with your staff, but I think bless them, everybody has to kind of, like I said, people need to have an open mind, because when you come to hospitality, you're not stuck to server or the virtualization. You need to have a generalized idea as to how everything works behind the scene, and you just need to know the basics of it, because if you know the basics, then you can start kind of getting it right. So I think the frustration is not being able to find a process as to how I can part the knowledge that we have accumulated over the years. That is the only frustration. Other than that, I think any MSP would say working odd hours. I don't think that is the frustration anymore. We have come well beyond that. The only frustration is to part the knowledge that we have within the team.
Gotcha. And so I guess another thing too is from a community perspective. I know there for MSPs there are a number of different community resources. There's Reddit and some other things, and also peer groups. So is there kind of like an equivalent peer group for MSPs in the hospitality industry where you guys kind of get together and talk? Hopefully you don't, hopefully you don't compete.
Not really. So basically, there isn't one for hospitality, and I think there should be one. Like MSP level community to be set up for hospitality. But we personally at the moment just use SolarWinds, because that is our RMM. So we use SolarWind and Reddit, to see how we can do things better. Yeah.
And do you go to any MSP industry trade shows? I know you go to the hospitality trade shows, but what about other things like that? Do you go to the SolarWinds? I don't know if they have a conference or not, do they?
Yeah, not at the moment, but I think we are considering, well, once, like I said, we get our team maybe a bit up and running, and then I can free up some time, then of course, we'll be attending those. At the moment, we don't do that. Okay,
yeah, it's always a matter of, do you take time out to leave and go to a trade show for a couple of days? It makes it tough.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, talking about technology, whether it's work-related, consumer, what technologies are you most excited about today? Whether it's available now or something coming in the future, what has you excited?
I think if I were to say generalize, is the connectivity. The connectivity, be it on the mobile or be it on the lease line, the speeds are increasing, allowing us to do things that a few years ago, we couldn't think. For example, main thing is, the cloud. I think the cloud is the most exciting thing, and I think being able to provide the services which are not dependent, on the physical resources. I think that is the bit that we are excited about.
Okay, and then what are you most worried about? What technologies scare you?
Again, the connectivity. So basically, you set everything up, and if on a D-Day, you haven't got the bandwidth, to get the show up and running again. I think that is the scariest part. And although we use, mainly we use Microsoft Azure platform, so we don't need to be worried about, anything happening to the data or anything. But some services like, the Sage, the accounting application, customer wants to use by their own server and put it into the data center. And so not being able to have access to those resources, if we need to, is what worries. But I think mainly is the connectivity.
Okay. Yeah. And everything being able to talk to everything else.
Yeah.
And maybe not secured as well. So once everything's connected, it's all got to be secured. Okay. So we are to our rapid fire round now. So this is meant to be fun. So I've got 6 questions. Just the first thing that comes to your mind. There's no wrong answer. And are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Mac.
Okay. Amazon or Azure or something else?
Azure.
Okay. Local backups or cloud or both?
Both.
Okay. Should you always virtualize? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
Printer support.
I can imagine, when in the hospitality industry, when things aren't printing, it's also a big issue. When people are trying to check out or need the receipts and those types of things. So definitely.
Yeah.
So before we take off, any other any parting words you'd like to let our audience know about here before we go?
No, I think well, it was fun, speaking to you, and thank you for inviting us. And basically, although we started out in 2009, we are kind of we consider ourselves everyday learning, on the MSP platform. And anybody who wants to be MSP, there will always be competition, but take the competition as the advantage, because competition is not always there to drive your prices down, but it can also help you, uplift your prices. And have confidence, as to what you do, and have fun, because otherwise everything else is pointless, right?
I agree. Krunal, thank you so much. It's been very enlightening for me. I've learned a lot, especially about the hospitality industry.
Thank you,
and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.